Today we're going to be presenting on designing trans technology, defining challenges, and envisioning community-centered solutions. And I'm going to introduce Sue Weinger, who's going to be presenting the first part here.
Hello, I'm Zoo. I'm a student at the University of Michigan, and I worked with Oliver on this project. We did this research because technologies are not designed for trans people, and we want to note that when we use the word trans, we mean people whose current genders are different than those that were assigned to them at birth, and explicitly includes non-binary people, which we included in the study. Being trans and using technology brings up a lot of different challenges, since technologies are generally not created with the intention of including trans people and supporting their experiences. Trans people face unique challenges in everyday life, and when using technology due to the gender transition process, which may involve social, physical, and/or legal changes like name changes, and also transphobia, discrimination, violence, algorithmic bias, and lack of resources. So a question that we had was, how can social technologies be designed with and for trans communities? Our two main research questions, we sought to understand challenges trans individuals and communities face and how technology can be designed to support these needs and challenges. And we did this by addressing these research questions. How can technology best support trans individuals and communities and meet their needs? And what types of future trans technologies do trans people envision? Future making through design involves brainstorming a list of critiques to the current situation, and in this case, the challenges that trans people face in society and in many areas of life, including technology, and then transforming those critiques to positive outcomes. So we conducted participatory design sessions focusing on future making through design with 3 sessions, 2 of them held here in Ann Arbor and 1 in Philadelphia during the Trans Wellness Conference, which were 2 hours each. And we compensated participants with a $40 gift card and meal or snacks. And we have the demographics of our participants below, 21 people total. So we asked the participants if we could take photos during our participatory design sessions, and this is what it looked like when we were having participants draw out their technologies. So our first activity included writing on Post-it notes what challenges is our community facing, and this prompt was meant to create different categories that we could come up with through. So after we asked this question, we categorized them and did a collaboratively affinity diagramming that was led by the participants. And here are a few examples of what they looked like. So we have healthcare as one, where people say competent healthcare providers and no therapy. And then the other one listed is work and money, where people have unemployment, no money, no jobs. So we have a total of 13 categories that we found when we were doing the affinity diagramming. So the first one was access to society, which include restroom access and being safe in physical spaces, financial and employment challenges such as barriers to employment and binary job applications, gatekeeping, such as not feeling trans enough or transphobia within LGBT spaces, healthcare, such as lack of trans competent providers. Next one was housing, which included housing discrimination and affordable housing, lack of access to resources, which are also listed before, like healthcare, housing, foods, lack of respect for one's identity, which includes people using incorrect names or pronouns. Online identity was our next one, including difficulty of expressing trans identity online and privacy and anonymity. Police was our next category, including harassment by police and police violence. Pressure to educate cisgender people about trans identities, such as lack of existing educational resources. Our next one was racial injustice, including white supremacy and anti-Blackness. Violence, including murder of trans women of color, and harassment. And our final category was miscellaneous challenges, which didn't fit into any of the above categories, such as lack of access to trans history and trans experiences being marginal to cisgender experiences. So after we did this activity with challenges, we led participants through word associations through a brainwriting activity. We asked participants these two big questions: what ideas come to mind when we say trans technology, and how might technology address some of the challenges that we discussed? During this activity, people would write down an idea that they had about these two questions, and then they would pass the note card to the person on their right, and the person on the right would expand or build on the idea that was first written. People would collaboratively brainstorm, sketch, and present the work to the group once we had about 5 ideas on each card.
So we came up with 4 different categories of trans technologies. The first was technologies for changing bodies. The next was technologies for changing appearances and gender expressions. And the difference here is the first category is more about physical changes, and the next category is more about people's appearances and how they express gender. The third category was technologies for safety, and then finally technologies for finding resources. So in our first category, participants in the design sessions expressed the need to have autonomy over their gender expression regarding their physical body and their identity. And so they envisioned technology to address this. So one example was a body changing laboratory. And participants said that this is where you can step into a machine and it will let you change and reshape your body. This machine allows us to apply, for lack of better words, whatever it is that you would like to apply or enhance on yourself. So although gender confirmation surgery happens frequently in trans communities, what makes this design different is the technological and do-it-yourself nature of a body-changing laboratory. So while this design idea is clearly very speculative and may not be technologically feasible, it provides important insight into the need to give trans people more control and agency over transition-related healthcare needs. The next category is technologies for changing appearances and gender expressions. So some participants were considering more physical rather than digital approaches to wearable technology design. Many participants described experiences they had with not being able to buy clothing that was particularly catered for trans people, and described ways to design clothing to address trans-specific challenges. So one participant said that this technology changes the appearance based on what you prefer at the moment. So it can have a padding illusion or binding. You can change the pattern of the clothing as well as the shape, like whether you want a dress or tank top or shorts. And a participant said maybe a practical thing could be just clothes that could be folded or manipulated in such a way so that they could be a different shape. It doesn't necessarily have to be that high tech. If there's reversible coats, I'm sure that idea could be taken in another direction. Another idea involved a necklace with interchangeable pronoun labels that would flash in certain colors when a person was misgendered. And it also includes a smokescreen canister that enables the wearer to disappear if necessary. Participants also envisioned mirrors and glasses that could change a person's view of themselves or their experience in the world. This was sort of an extension on the body-changing design ideas. Participants suggested things like augmented glasses and mirror technologies that allow a person to view themselves as they envision their gender and to see how potential body changes would look before actually going through with the procedures. So one participant said, you start by seeing in a mirror so you can change how you want to see it first before you go into the machine and change it. In addition to changes to one's own appearance, augmented technology could also change people's experiences with others. For instance, being able to view one's world differently than the world that they actually experience on a day-to-day basis. One participant said, what if you had glasses where you could see yourself in society as you would like to see yourself in society, and you couldn't see transphobia, you couldn't see transmisogyny or any other ism? Our next category was technologies for safety. And a primary challenge that participants mentioned during the design sessions was their concern for safety. And this was particularly about fears of violence in public spaces. So participants envisioned a community-based technological application that involved, as they said, some type of hotline or device that enables guardian angels to be alerted when violence occurs. It would confirm an appropriate or effective justice is done that actually holds police accountable. Our final category was technologies for finding resources. To address this challenge of finding resources, several different groups of participants designed what they called a trans Yelp. Such a site or app would offer an online space for trans people to rate and review local businesses. Additionally, it would enable trans people to find information about trans-friendly restrooms, affordable housing, healthcare assistance, affordable food, etc. And because this idea was raised by multiple groups of participants, we saw a few different variations. So one group sketched a trans Yelp that focused solely on healthcare resources and finding trans-friendly and trans-competent doctors. Another group drafted a trans Yelp that centered Black trans people that they called BTF. And this participant said, are they specifically queer spaces? I also added a potential filter down to, are they friendly to queer and trans people of color specifically? And on there, you could have resources about why you need queer spaces, why you need spaces specifically for queer people of color. So to recap, our 4 categories of trans technologies are listed here. And many of the designs that we described above, whether they were things like traditional sites or apps, or wearable technology, physical technology, augmented reality, or futuristic form-altering technologies, many of them included community-based aspects in serious ways. And this signifies that trans technology design must reach beyond design for individuals to design for communities and consider how community members can use technology to support each other. Additionally, this line of work is an example of what Dombrowski et al. Call social justice-oriented interaction design, in which HCI design is not just about technological possibility, but also about political responsibility. Designing with trans people to address trans challenges is a social justice issue in which marginalized people's experiences of systemic oppression are at the forefront. And additionally, because many participants in our study were Black or were of additional marginalized races or ethnicities, we can't separate racial inequities from our findings. Race figured prominently in participants' design ideations. So when we describe trans technologies and how to design them, what this means is intersectional trans technologies that also center marginalized races, ethnicities, and additional salient identity facets. To summarize, although technology can't solve the difficult challenges that trans people and communities face, it can in some ways improve trans people's lives. Technology can help to provide space and support that enable trans people to express and change bodies, appearances, and gender presentations, to maintain safety, share resources, and connect with other community members. So the next steps for our project, we're going to be prototyping some of these technology designs and doing some follow-up design sessions. And importantly, designing trans technologies must involve maintaining connections with community members, designing with them, and making sure that they have a voice in the design process. So I want to thank you all for being here, and thanks to the organizers, and also thanks to the Michigan Institute for Research on Women and Gender for funding this work. And we are happy to take questions.